Hello everybody and welcome again to Frontierland with me, Dean Allen. I hope you're well. This is now the third episode of Frontierland. For those that you've joined us before, you'll know that we try to bring in some really inspiring guests, and tonight we've really got an inspiring guest for you. On the first episode, of course, if you remember, we had Div de Villiers, the big protector, and a few weeks ago I had Francine Zana, this inspirational lady from here in Port Elizabeth, who worked her way up from being a chambermaid to now owning her own company. An incredible story. Those recordings are still available on this channel, so please do go back and watch them and enjoy them. But I don't know what you've been doing this week, but I've had an incredible time here in Nelson Mandela Bay, and I really did experience something for the first time that I didn't even know was so close to where I've lived. When we moved here back in April, I'd heard that Algoa Bay was a special place, but this week I went out on a boat into this bay and experienced some incredible marine life. I've got some pictures here of what I witnessed. We actually went out with an operation called Raggy Charters. Lloyd Edwards and his teams do such incredible work out in the bay, making people aware of this incredible marine life that we've got. You see here adult humpback whales breaching, which is quite remarkable. Anywhere else in the world, there would be dozens of boats around these incredible creatures witnessing this. But here in Nelson Mandela Bay, we've almost got these creatures to ourselves. So if you ever do think about, certainly the South Africans watching, coming to another part of the country you haven't visited before, how about that? It's not just Hermanus that have the whales. Anyway, we're going to talk about tonight. I've got an incredible man for you. An adventurer, certainly, is into his sport like I am, but he's certainly into his conservation. I'm going to bring him on now, Mr. Wayne Bolton, and I hope you enjoy tonight's show.
Ooh, welcome to the show. Now it's your time to shine. We're gonna have a lekker chat tonight. Another good time.
How you doing, Wayne?
I'm very well, thanks, and yourself, Dean?
Good. Nice to see you actually sitting still for a change and not on a bike.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot softer on the seat.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. You've just returned from riding from Namibia to here back to Port Elizabeth, 2,500 kilometres. I nearly said miles, but that's still impressive. Are you mad? What was that all about?
Yeah, I sometimes feel like I am. You know, they say mad dogs and Englishmen in the sun, the midday sun, and I spent quite a bit of time in the sun over the last few expeditions. But you know, at the same time, I think it's almost a natural thing for people to want to go outside of their comfort zone, and that was the case for me. So mad, but in a good way.
In a good way, yeah. And I think before we go any further, I think we've got a video which explains what the work you do, which is incredible. But we're going to talk more about you this evening. It's not just about what you do for this wonderful planet of ours. But Gary, if we could just start the video and we'll
Mr. Wayne Bolton is nearing the end of his epic 2.5-month, 6,000 kilometre awareness trek across the country. He arrived at the wilderness section of the Garden Route of the National Park.
Up to meet the land. Our souls cry out to heal our land. Don't take for granted what we have. Under one sky, we're all the same. Cry for me, one land, one land. Joint custody must be our plan. The only way we'll all be free. One land, sing with me. Don't leave behind only tears. Let's sing for those who cannot speak. Work together to protect our weak. Cry for me, one land, one land. Joint custody must be our plan. It's the only way we'll all be free. One land, sing with me. One land, sing with me. African sky, African rain. African soul, no more pain. One land we love, one land we share. Responsibility is ours to bear. Cry for me, one land, one land. Joint custody must be our plan. It's the only way we'll all be free. One land, sing with me. Cry for me, one land, one land. Joint custody must be our plan. It's the only way we'll all be free. One land, sing with me. One land, sing with me. African sky, African rain. African soul, no more pain. Sing Africa. African sky, African rain. Africa. African soul, no more pain. Sing Africa. African sky, African rain. Africa. African soul, no more pain. Africa. African sky, African rain.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff, inspiring. Tell me about the tune first of all. Who's that singing?
Yeah, so that's a remarkable story in itself in terms of our principle of hashtag joint custody, because Claire Venn, Claire, I don't know what your name is now, but that's her maiden name. Aramsa. Okay, so Claire wrote that song for Ollie, and if you listen to the lyrics, it's the most incredible lyrics about the need to take care of the environment, and you'll hear in their hashtag joint custody as well, the importance of combining our efforts for conservation. So Claire's remarkable, and she did that just out of love for conservation.
And you had some quite, I noticed a few famous faces there. A famous rugby player, one of our captains.
Yeah, John Smith. So the clip you've just seen now was a combination of two of the expeditions, the first two expeditions I did. The first one of 6,000 Ks, joining all the sandparks reserves.
Yeah.
They're obviously the custodian of our natural heritage. And then the second expedition, which, because the poaching was coming down into the Eastern Cape and KZN, I rode from Kabeja to Mozambique border through the Transkei, joining the private reserves. And of course, the private reserves have a massive role to play in our country in terms of rhino conservation. So we wanted to draw attention to what they're doing, and of course the rangers that are sleeping out there tonight, conserving our wildlife. They're really protecting our rhino. I think if a rhino stands 9 times more chance of being poached on state land than if they're in a private reserve. So we wanted to give them kudos, and that was, you would have seen the expedition joining those reserves, and John Smith rode in to the finish at the Sabaya Hotel in Durban.
But he didn't ride the whole way with you?
No. So it was mostly a solo ride,
Yeah.
although you would have seen some shots as well of our kids Daniel and Laura joining us. and we were welcomed at Addo, which was the last park of the first expedition. But we figured, seeing as our goal is awareness, we could harness people like John Smith, who was very willing to actually give of his time for something like rhino conservation. He did it very graciously, and he's a busy man. But it's so good to see celebrities that actually step out for our natural heritage. They reach people that we could never do.
Well, when you say stepping out, Wayne, I think people need to realise that this man, we were trying to work out a distance earlier on when we were doing prep for the show, and we've worked out that you've probably cycled almost around the world, but 3/4 of the way around the world. So you've got to complete that final quarter.
Yes.
Which is no mean feat in itself.
Yeah.
Tell me about this One Land Love It passion of yours. How did that name come about? We love the hashtag Ollie, of course. You've got this giant rhino that you take around, not a real one, of course, but one that you take around. We call it Ollie, and you've got a real awareness, certainly here in the Eastern Cape, and increasingly, I hope, through mediums like this nationally as well, of what you're doing. How did that come about? And the other thing is, I believe it's a family concern as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so a lot of, I think almost all of the this kind of thing, and certainly in my case, originate from what you taught as a youngster. So in my case, my parents were very conservation orientated. We spent quite a bit of time in the bush, game viewing and so on, and so you grow up with that interest and that love for wildlife, and that develops as you get older and more mature into the question, how do I do something to conserve this and to leave a heritage for the future. So, and that was really the start, I would say, the foundation of my interest in conservation. Plus, my brother and I, Garth, we did quite a bit of canoeing in those days on the doozy, spent a lot of time in the bush and so on. And so that was really underpinning the first expedition, which we called One Land Love It. As you say, the acronym is Ollie. And we really gave it a simple name because we wanted something that would easily convert to meaning in some of the more rural areas where some of the kids might be illiterate. And by reading that One Land Love It, it's a very easy description of and a call to action in it. So the first expedition was actually called that, as I say, One Land Love It, and it became the name of the non-profit organization that we formed when we came back from that expedition. We realized that we had a following of like-minded people that wanted to be involved, and so that became a platform. And when you've got that kind of a platform, not only is it responsible to use it for good, but it's our passion, it's our family's passion. So we realized that we needed to hand over that baby into something bigger, really, and we formed the non-profit, an established non-profit with a board of directors. So that's a sign of good governance to us. We made sure that everything was transparent. Bookkeepers and accountants involved. So there's a lot of haze over non-profits and their spending. So we wanted to be sure that we did this properly, and people could rest assured that if they did make a donation, it was going to where it should. So the life-size rhino we called Ollie as well, and we often teach the kids the Ollie sound. So it's O-L-L-I, and kids wherever we go will be shouting Ollie, Ollie as we go past, which is very awesome. So it's become a bit of a brand and an icon too. So it's nice.
And your wife Nikki's very involved, isn't she? She works with you alongside. She's the powerhouse behind it all. Yeah. You just get on the bike and ride. Let's face it.
Exactly. It's like easy peasy, and she manages everything. So Nikki, in the first instance, when I was sitting in the man cave and sort of came up with this thought about, I really think I need to jump off this treadmill of my life. That was quite hectic. It wasn't a life I could foresee me living until I retired one day. I'd come out of a retrenchment, some years before, and established a business. And it was hard work to try and keep it up and running, but I really wasn't feeling that it was adding meaning to life. So you could imagine the shock though when I said to Nikki, listen, this is what I'm thinking. I've got this drive to do something, and I'd read Peter van Ketz's book, the Eighth Summit, and a really inspiring book. And I wanted to do something, but I wanted to do it for something that counted more than my ego. So when I approached her and said, think about it and pray about this, her jaw dropped open, and I think she thought, as you said earlier, mad, let's just leave it to die over, but blow over, But when she engaged, she became the driving force behind it, and it's still like that. So very much to this day, that's 7 years ago now, her and our daughter Laura very much involved in the non-profit, almost on a daily basis. They put their back into that together with our board.
Yeah, and you said that you've got ambassadors. You're not the only crazy guy doing these magnificent things for our planet. There's somebody actually, as we speak now, a lady called Sharon Jessup, who I had the pleasure of meeting. I think it was a few days into my my move to Port Elizabeth, and she's actually running the route that you took on your bike. Is that right? And that's happening. I think Sharon's watching tonight.
Yeah,
if you're out there, Sharon, I hope the blisters are okay.
Yeah, and the injuries.
She is.
No, absolutely. So we've got an ambassador program. So Sharon was our first ambassador. We got Grant Bresler, who came on board as well.
Yeah.
And they obviously promote Ollie. Yeah. And we've also got another program which we run every single year, which is called the Ollie Move, which really gives meaning to the concept that we have of moving from caring to doing. We maintain it's not enough just to be interested anymore. Our rhino on the brink of extinction. We need to do something about it, and how we're going to act. So we demonstrate that by getting people around the world to actually do some activity. I think last year we had 32 or 33 countries involved, or people from 32, 33 countries that were doing some kind of a Ollie move. So Sharon's doing an awesome one at the moment. She's doing the route that I did on the second expedition, joining those reserves. And we had Jenny Gould, who climbed to Everest Base Camp, Stephen Lancaster, who attempted Everest. I think he got an injury, but he went as high as Kilimanjaro. Lady Slipper, Andrew Stewart, who swam around Cape Recife, and Medakaya France, who's the Eastern Cape Marathon champ, and I think a South African athlete as well, who's also going to do something. So it's all about being role models and showing I'm prepared to actually go out and do something. What can you do in the space where you are to make a difference for our rhino?
It's all about people doing something with it within their own capacity. We were there to welcome Andrew Stewart ashore, of course.
Yeah.
We'd been in the water, him and his brother Duncan, for 3.5 hours,
Yeah.
and they went around the Cape Recife lighthouse, which was quite incredible. And even more incredible when I've heard stories of some of the sharks that live off of that reef, but that's another story. Talking of the marine life, which I've recently experienced, as I said, through a trip that I made this week. We partnered with Sandcob when they came ashore, of course, and there's the plight in the bay at the moment of the African penguin. It's a diminishing species because of various reasons out there. You choose to focus on the rhino, but are there other sort of areas of concern that you work with? I know the elephant's in your emblem. I mean, do you look to other species as well if they need your support?
Yeah, so we focus on all big mammals basically. But we found that the problem with rhino is so urgent that we tend to give 99% of our focus to that. But we do try and collaborate, as we've seen now, with other institutions where we can, and give some kind of awareness to other species as well. So, but mostly it's rhino. That's where we feel at this stage we've been drawn to work on. But certainly we can work with any of the bigger mammals as well.
And as you said, the main challenge or the perception of many of these NGOs and charities is that the money is being used for what people donate towards.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I've had conversations with
Yeah.
with Andrew Moore from the Wilderness Foundation, and that's one of the challenges they've got to regulate that area.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be a concern for me. It is a concern for me as well as a member of the public, especially, dare I say it, in South Africa as well, where corruption is rife. So that was the reason why we actually decided that we have to establish, a credible organisation that's run well, and in that way, we can say to organisations, make a donation, we'll give you a Section 18A certificate, it's all above board, and with a guarantee that the admin fees that a lot of non-profits milk, we don't. So, the vast majority of what comes in goes to what it's intended to. We're almost a conduit for rhino and for funds to go to.
And that's such an important thing. As I said, people have confidence in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about you, though. You're really a son of Southern Africa, aren't you? Born in Zambia, moved to Zimbabwe, your teenage years in Zimbabwe, and then tell me about that journey first of all, and then what brought you down here to South Africa?
Yeah, so I was born in a little place called Mufulira on the Copper Belt, right up near the Congo border.
Okay.
But left there when I was 3. I don't have many memories of it. Funny enough, the only memory that I really have is of sunsets. So I think it's just my inclination towards nature. Have been back since, though, obviously with my late dad. It was a lovely country, and it's almost a place where you grow up in the bush. Camping or hunting or fishing. It's just amazing. I still have family there. But moved down for better prospects. My folks were always visionary in that sense that they wanted to give us the best opportunities as kids. And so we moved down to Rhodesia at the time. And I stayed there until I was 17. So that in a lot of ways is, I would say, what I regard my formative years. It's, your teenage years is where you remember most of your life's lessons and nonsense you get up to. So very good years, and then my folks made the same decision. I'm one of 4 boys, and the opportunities up there were really limited at the time. We weren't sure what was going to happen politically, and so we moved down to Durban, and that's where I met Nikki. And we've been married for way over 30 years. Went to university there and moved down to Port Elizabeth about 13 years ago. So that's been my journey, and very happy in this city, I must say, just from a size perspective and having wildlife on our doorstep. We Sandparks honorary rangers, so we always on duty there, or often on duty there, and love where we placed at this stage.
It's an absolute privilege to live here, isn't it? We've got, like you said, we've got so much on our doorstep, and there's a lot happening actually, and we just need to preserve that natural world that we've got around us. That's the thing. But by day you're a labour law consultant.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't have had a show about that. I know it's important work, but not so interesting, of course.
No.
So how do you balance this kind of, because when you go off on one of these expeditions, I mean, it's for months on end. It needs planning. So how do you balance your sort of day job with this in passion, which is your drive, of course? Yeah. And when was that moment you decided this was something you needed to do?
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, but one that I'm glad I have now. So it's almost a process of osmosis where things in your life come together and drive some kind of a change in your life, a tipping scale of events, so to speak. And in my case, it was, as I mentioned earlier, sitting in the man cave, sort of looking out towards Addo with a cup of coffee in the December holidays, and just having an opportunity to actually just take a breath and let the mind settle a bit. And reflect on my life, which you don't often get a chance to do actually. Life is just one hell of a pace, you know. And so it was a matter of thinking where, you know, I need to feel, you know, that I'm more fulfilled and happier than what I'm doing now. I can't see myself doing this until I retire, as I said. But what is it that I'm looking for? And that's a difficult question to answer. So it was at that moment really that I realized I wanted to do something along the adventure line. And that is still a philosophy of mine really, that in your life you have to do something that's a challenge that you don't know if you can complete. Be it a micro adventure or a bigger adventure, and adventure is very subjective as a word, but you need to line up for something that you think, I don't know if I can actually make this. Otherwise, you're going to really battle to develop yourself. You need to find out where your boundaries are. So this was lining up at the start line of something which I really didn't think I could do without a lot of grit, and that was the 6,000 cycle. I was grossly overweight. You know, I don't think my health was great. Stressed. And I wasn't a cyclist, so you know, I had done in the past canoeing and some running, but it was years before that, you know, sort of 13, 15 years before that, I think. So I had to really train for a year to get up to that position where I could cycle, and to do it for something that I really cared for. And suddenly there was almost a weight off my shoulders, sitting in that man cave where I thought, you know what, this is something that is going to, it's a new problem, and it's something that is really going to stretch me now. So I added that to my existing workload, as it were, but you know, it's that sharpening the saw concept, I suppose, that Stephen Covey, I think, where it just gives you that ability to get perspective on life. And of course, that kind of adventure can be very different for somebody else. You know, I've just heard of a bloke that also did a lot of serious adventures in his life, physical, you know, adventures, but he's just gone on a tour around Spain with a violin, because his biggest fear was to stand in front of people with a violin and try and play music for an income. And he conquered his fear. That was an adventure for him. It's anything that actually stretches you, as silly as that sounds. But so yeah, I'm glad I did it. And it, you know, as soon as you step out of your comfort zone, it changes the trajectory of your life somehow. And in my case, it's been with the whole family, because my family is my team, and I'm part of their team, and so we've done something together, and we've all been on that journey of on this different trajectory, which was sparked by, as I say, stepping out of comfort zone. And so, of course, when you do something like that, then the question arises again, you know, my work is not finished, is it? There's something else that I need to do. And what about the private reserves? They're really doing a lot. And Kingsley Holgate, who I met at the end of the first expedition, is a wily old fox, you know, and he was at the finish and said, it's a pity you didn't carry on through Natal, because they really need some focus on the rhino problem. And within a year I was doing that.
You just planted the seed, didn't you?
Yeah,
you knew this wasn't going to be the end for you.
No, I think that's the thing, you know, when people have done have tasted the experience of living a fuller life, your boundaries expand, and you've got a new parameter. You're a new person, and you can't go back to the old person, as it were. So you know, your impression of yourself changes, because you've faced challenges in a compressed period where you didn't really know if you could actually overcome them, and you have. And so you feel a lot more confident in yourself that you can achieve anything if I can do that, you know. So adventures I recommend. Yeah.
Well, it's an inspirational story, and I'm sure a lot of people watching will relate to that, whether you've got the courage to actually make the change. It doesn't have to be a life-changing thing. No. It's just going in a direction. I know I've done it. I read somewhere that you have, in terms of your career, you have 3 major career changes on average in your life. for me personally, I was working in a job I didn't like up into my mid-20s, and then I met somebody. It was a South African who brought me to this country and changed the way I look at the world, because I fell in love with the country. But not only that, through education, it changed me. It facilitated various things, and I thought I was going to be a university lecturer for the rest of my life, and yet I'm on this path now as I suppose as a freelance writer and doing things like this, and I've never been happier. So sometimes you have to take that leap. It's not always where the steady paycheck is. That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
And traditionally, a lot of people around you will want you to be secure and stay in that space. So I totally understand your feelings.
Yeah.
Of course, it was fundamental that your family backed you.
Yeah.
But talking about family, if you don't mind me mentioning, wasn't it something with your son as well? You had a challenge with your family that has also driven you, and I'm sure has put things into perspective.
Yeah, I think, along those lines, we did the second expedition, which was in 2017. And as I said, during the private reserves, I don't want to say normal experience, because, but, Daniel, who's our older son, and Laura riding stretches, with us. But it was shortly after that he went from that healthy picture to picking up cancer. So, and it was like an absolute shock to the family. I went grey, so that's my excuse. Yeah. But
at least you've got hair. It's all relative,
Yeah. So, but it's not like I'm the only one that has, or my family's the only one that has issues. I think that's life. You have, without cheapening the experience, but everybody has these challenges, but it's not something that you ever want to hear.
No, of course.
That your son has got, or your child has got cancer. So, and that in itself, I suppose, is an adventure, and in the sense of having to show resilience in the midst of incredible fear, because resilience is your ability to go back to your original shape, as it were. And you're all distorted because of this, and in a lot of it, your mind is running away with things. But to return to that original shape and to get everything in place again is I suppose the trick, and it takes a lot of balance and a lot of faith and courage. And those two words, I think, have driven me a lot on the expeditions that I've done. I've held on to those two words really, and those two concepts. So he's all well, he's all good, and
right.
he's cancer free and so on, and we've all learnt from it, and eternally grateful that he's well, and aware that so many people haven't survived it, so, and are in a worse position. But these things are sent to your way, let's put it that way, without you asking for them, and you just have to deal with them as best you can. But it was certainly a traumatic time for all of us, least of all Daniel.
But obviously life-changing and putting things into perspective.
Yes.
So I can imagine you don't regret a moment making that decision to go from that supposedly mundane life to something that actually drives you and your passion.
Exactly, and you alluded to it just now, talking about your own path. It's a path which is, I'm sure, a fair degree of fear, because you're giving up that that regular paycheck. But your needs change as you get older, or not even necessarily older, but through your life your needs change. What is it that will make you happy and fulfilled? And you discover that money is just money, and your wealth is not money. It's your wealth is more than that. As I say, it's better to be sad in a Merc than in a Forksy, but nevertheless, it's about what is of real value, of lasting value. So that's where your wealth is. So all of those things, I think, leave a residue of perspective in your life, where you realize that I've got so much to be grateful for. It's very difficult to be negative when you're grateful about something, and you're counting your blessings and you realize what you've got relative to other people.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking money.
No.
Then you suddenly you can't be negative when you're grateful. It's that gratitude is an attitude, and you have to actually consciously decide I'm riding in this desert, and I'm sickling on, and I'm on corrugations, and I've got a gale force headwind, and I'm not having fun now. This is like, I'm Aina, I've got roasties on my bum, I can't sit down properly, and you've got to look around you and say, okay, hang on, what am I grateful for? And you start to actually feel a little bit selfish, because you realize how privileged you are to be riding in this magnificent Namib desert. And how many people would die to see that, you know. It's really a first world attitude in a lot of ways, a first world problem when you're moaning about what you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
And it suddenly gives you perspective, you know. Just some people are trying to get food
Yeah.
in this world,
Yeah.
and you're moaning
Yeah.
about cycling along on this road.
Yeah.
Suck it up and be grateful for what you've got. And as I say, if you've got that attitude of gratitude, it's hard to be negative.
There's always something in this great country we live in every day that will remind us of that. Remind us of there's always somebody worse off, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't moan about the minor stuff. And the thing, I've done a lot of cycling, and it's a very solitary experience.
Yeah.
When you're on your own, certainly
Yeah.
when you're out there, and it's mind over matter, but you get a lot of time to think to yourself,
Yeah.
don't you? I think we've got some images, Gary, haven't we, of some of Wayne's adventures. Let's have a look at this. Well, reduce
Reduce
speed now.
speed.
Were you
You
speeding?
like that?
Yeah. Were you
Yeah.
speeding?
I can't say I was.
No, I can see.
You've got to find humour in these things, you know. There's
Without a doubt. Where was that? That looks like the Karoo somewhere. Pretty.
that was somewhere in Namibia. I can't
Oh,
even remember
Namibia.
where.
Okay. You're lucky to even see
Um,
a road sign in Namibia.
There was another road sign that said, you know, don't drive tired. Basically, rest. Take a rest now, which I also sat next to and took it for every.
There we go.
tired, stop,
There we
rest.
go. Yeah, you must do what you say.
I thought it was funny, but it's also a way of dealing with the long road.
How did you cope? Certainly Namibia. I mean, I've been look at that. I mean, absolutely stunning. I mean, it's beautiful to look
Yeah.
at, but I can imagine that was pretty late in the day. You're tired. You're thirsty. You just want to
Yeah.
get to your next stop. How do you push on through? Is it a case of you think of the people depending on you, or you're that stubborn you push through moments like that?
Yeah, there's so many aspects to, you know, to actually being able to persevere and to show that resilience, and it's you've got to have all of them in place to be able to do something like this. So, you know, I'm not doing a tour event where you've got unlimited time. I'm doing I'm on a timer. I've got people to meet,
Yeah.
and I've got to be back here at 12 o'clock on the World Rhino Day, the 22nd of September. So I can't fiddle around. I've got to make it work. And so I think the platform has always been for me to be disciplined. And you know, the first expedition I would get up at 3 o'clock every morning to beat the heat. It was the hottest year in 103 years. On one occasion, the temperature reaching 60 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
Yeah, Askam in Kalahari. So I would get up at 3 o'clock every morning and make sure that I was on that bike, come hell or high water, and I wouldn't miss a day, and I wouldn't miss a meter. I would had coordinates to start and stop, and I would link every single part from start to finish and make sure that there was integrity in what I was doing. And you know, when it gets to tough times where, as I say, you're starting to go into a negative spiral and need a good talking to, I would remind myself of why I'm doing this. And so your why is very important, and it's how you secure commitment to anything that you're doing. It's like the foundation of something like this. And in my case, I could look down, and on my handlebars I've got a pink rhino which was given to me by Petronelle Nieuwoud of Care for Wild Rhino in the first expedition. And she said to me, because they were a beneficiary, we raised funds for them and for Sam Parks, honorary rangers, and she said, when you're cycling on and you need to fuss bait, just look at this rhino and remember why you're doing it. So I named her 5, because when she's gone there's only the big 4.
Wow,
And what a travesty.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I put her on the handlebars on all 3 expeditions, and I would, when I'm battling on, just look down and be reminded of the why. I'm doing this for rhino conservation. And of course the other why was my personal reason, which was to live my life to the fullest and to stretch myself. And so, amongst other things, you just have to fuss bait, and at some stage where you just have nothing left, it's a matter of just grinding it out, you know. And there's that quote which is attributed to Winston Churchill. I don't think it was his. From what I read, you might know better than me, being a historian, but you know, when you're going through hell, keep going. That kind of concept, and that would be the drive for me, just to go kilometre by kilometre until I won't say before you know it, but eventually you reach your target, and tomorrow will be a better day. So.
And you were telling me earlier about one incident where you were just cycling along, and this old African was sitting on his stoop, and he gave you probably the biggest confirmation and boost.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, it's interesting, hey, and more than once, I must say. So I've ridden a lot of the streets in Africa, in South Africa, and as I was saying earlier, what I've discovered is that the people of South Africa are not what you see on the news and not what you see in social media, in all respects, in terms of race relations, in terms of goodness of people, and so on. You know, it's really when you are moving slowly on a road, on a bicycle, and you're interacting with people, you realize there are more really good people in South Africa than bad people. There's a minority that gets all the limelight, but and Africa's so vibrant, you know, such a resilient people, and wear their hearts on their sleeve half the time as well. So many a time, you know, I would be riding and see in the distance somebody sitting, and they're obviously watching me come, you know, from miles down the road as well. And as I get closer, and guy looking at me and realizing that there's actually a white beard there, and I'm riding at a fair pace, you know, go past me, and as I go past, say, yeah, yo. As a realization that, hey, this toppy is actually in the middle of nowhere here, and he's not doing too bad, you know, which was such a great accolade.
Yeah,
and
no, of course.
it was, you know, it gives you a chuckle for the next 2 hours, you know. But no, some great memories.
You've seen parts of South Africa and Southern Africa that a lot of us could only dream of, and there's something special about being from the saddle as well. I mean, despite the exertion. You mentioned being grateful, of course, and I'm very grateful for the people that are tuning in, watching this. Of course, we're competing with the Soccer World Cup. Normally I'd be watching that tonight, but of course, thank you for everybody who's chosen us live, and those that are watching later, I don't blame you, that's fine. We've got some lovely messages here. Lizette here said, we love you, Wayne, you're awesome. Thanks for everything you do. The Cotswold Primary, what's that all about, Cotswold Primary?
Yeah, so we thank you very much, Lizette. We've try and partner with like-minded organizations, and kids are very close to our hearts, so that's the next generation, obviously. And we're very involved in schools, some of the schools on the border of the parks, like in Edo and Namatansankwa, and also some of the local schools. And we've had tremendous support from some of the schools, like Cotswold, just to mention one, who've raised funds for us along the way, you know, raffles and so on. And in fact, we've just recently sent some money to a rhino orphanage now. It was raised by two of our schools, that has gone to milk powder and so on. So we then go and do a talk at the school, and often it will be Nikki that will go and chat to the kids in the environmental club, or in an assembly, or I'll go and talk in an assembly and just explain to them the importance of rhino conservation and a little bit about what we've done. And we'll take Ollie as well, and you know, sometimes it's just enough to actually park Ollie on the lawn, on the field. You know, they don't really want to hear me or Nikki, or they'll just go and here's Ollie. You know.
Yeah, no. But education's important, and community engagement's important, isn't it? I mean, as you know, I'm writing the history of wildlife tourism in Eastern Cape, and it's becoming bigger and bigger. And the message that I'm getting, none of this will work or be sustainable without community engagement. If you don't, it's not just education, it's actually people buying into this idea to preserve our environment, to preserve the endangered species. It's in their best interest as well. So everybody must understand that. How do you go about it with your program?
Yeah, it's unity of purpose, you know. So really, from our perspective, as I say, we did something. We did these expeditions. We got a following, and people that can't actually go and get on a bicycle, they've supported us. And you know, the world is looking for people to take the lead in certain areas, and we can take the lead. It's in this area because we're so passionate about it, and we're saying, please just follow us, do what you can, and rally the troops. And you know, there's not everybody's interested, and there's so many demands on people's interests. There's, you know, obviously more problems in the world than just rhino, and we completely understand that. But you know, especially in the Eastern Cape, but not only in the Eastern Cape, we've been really moved by how people do want to get involved and rally behind them. So we've got such a nice network at this stage of involved and committed people in all areas of business and institutions and personally and so on, that if not financially, moral support and is huge. So thank you to everybody that does support us in that regard. You know, without you, we cannot run the non-profit, so we appreciate that. Yeah.
Talking of support, there's lovely Cheryl here, and Cheryl is quoting somebody, of course, that the late Dr. Ian Player, but he said it's important to keep the conservation alive regarding rhino poaching. You're doing exceptional work, Wayne. Of course you are.
Thanks, Cheryl.
And that means a lot. And there's Sharon, of course. Yes, the poster species. You're right, Sharon. We were talking to Div de Villiers, of course, and Div's in law enforcement in terms of this, but the people are aware of the rhino. It's the high profile thing, so we tend to use that, don't we, as the poster, as it were, as the advertiser. But there are other issues with it's all linked in terms of our ecosystem, as we know. Gareth Burley, of course, does great work for PE culture and life here.
Thanks, Gareth.
Yeah, look at the messages coming in, which is
Mum.
lovely. Is that Mum?
That's Mum.
I hope it was Mum. You all should have Mum as well. Coming in, and then we've got Andrew, of course. Andrew, we were inspired by you, Mr. Stewart, with that swim, because that took some doing as well.
And what he's doing in tourism,
of course,
amazing.
Of course, Camilla as well.
Camilla.
There. Thank you, Mark. No, some
Betty. That's great, man. Melissa, that's awesome.
Thank you. No,
nice to see.
I mean, everybody's inspired by your story. The people watching live, people who watch it later. This will be shared. Please do share this story of what you and your family are doing, because Ollie is here to stay. I can see that. I mean, you're passionate about what you do. If people want to help practically, maybe they don't want to run around Southern Africa like Mrs. Jessup there, or they don't necessarily, or they can't climb a mountain. Are there other ways they can get involved in what you do?
Absolutely, and wherever you're placed, you can do something. So, you know, I always maintain it starts with educating yourself first, so you understand what the issues are to do with rhino conservation. Get involved. The more that you understand about it, the more you seem to be committed to doing something about the cause. So, you know, it can be as simple as buying something from a charity that supports rhino conservation, or donating something. And obviously, we're a non-profit, so we're always looking for donations, especially from corporates, as I say, that might need a tax rebate of sorts with Section 18A certificates. You know, we're a credible organisation that can help with that. So just find us on oneland.co.za. That's our website. You can read about us and also see banking details and so on. But there's other passive ways that you can get involved as well. So if you have a My Planet card, then link Ollie, One Land Love It, on your My Planet card. And when you're shopping at Woolies and so on, you a percentage of that goes to Ollie, and then we use that obviously for direct rhino work, where we do the collaring and the dehorning, and as well as work in the communities, education and so on. or it's nearly Christmas, so anybody that might want to buy a gift, consider buying a gift off our what we call our Ollie shop, also on our website, oneland.co.za. And there's things like these bracelets that I've got. This is made out of snares that have been recovered from the Kruger area, and this beautiful bracelet here is from Havilah Jewelers, who is very supportive of us. All rhino related items. So consider buying that, and a percentage of that goes or all the profits actually go to rhino conservation on our shop. So.
Oh, super. And talking about Christmas, I've got an early Christmas present. Wayne's kindly given me a signed copy of his book, The Ride of a Lifetime, and I look forward to, if I do get the time, over the holidays to read that. So that I'm sure that's available also on your website as well.
Yeah, it is, and thank you for that. As I say, it's a bit terrifying giving a book to a best-selling author, but you know what it's like. So
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to receive a book. I promise you. And I know the pain that you went through writing that. So it really does mean a lot. But
yeah, you can. If anybody's interested, have a look on my website, which is waynebolton.co.za, and you can place your order directly, or you can go to Fogarty's or Sunshine Collective, and in any of these Sandpark shops as well.
Super.
They're in there too.
Best of luck with that, and what's on the horizon? Are you going to announce tonight your next expedition?
So book 2 probably, but certainly we'll invest time in just developing Ollie further. We really have to try and get the non-profit organisation up onto a bigger footprint, and so the board is going to be working very hard on that. But there's no plan so far in terms of any expeditions.
I'm sure your wife is quite pleased about that. You're going to just be around for a bit longer, and
I suspect she doesn't believe me.
I'm sure there's things around the house we can keep you busy with, so don't worry about that. But Wayne, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you today. I was there when you came in at the Donkin. I remember the excitement. We hadn't actually met personally there, but I'd heard a lot about you ever since I arrived in the Bay. You were one of these people that really do give this place, I think, that this special energy. I mean, part of the community, that people are going beyond their own personal gratification to do stuff. So I hope tonight, ladies and gentlemen, this show, Frontierland, it is about inspiration. I try to bring on guests like Wayne and the guests we've had in the past, and I'm looking forward to joining you probably for one more show before we all go off on our holidays before Christmas. We're probably scheduling the show for Tuesday the 6th of December, so put that in your diary. I look forward to announcing the next guest then, but for now, thank you, Wayne. Have a good evening, and put your feet up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.